The summer heat in Baltimore was heavy and thick, the kind of humidity that made the asphalt of O'Donnell Street feel soft underfoot. For 3 weeks after walking out of the restaurant in Harbor East, Marcus enjoyed his quiet routine. He worked his daytime dispatch shifts, checked in on his sister's kids, and spent his evenings watching the tugboats guide massive container ships into the Dundalk Marine Terminal. But Marcus knew that desperate people rarely went away quietly. He had grown up on streets where a bruised ego was often followed by a retaliation. And Lisa's ego, along with her father's bank accounts, had been deeply bruised. The first warning sign came on a Tuesday. Marcus was reviewing his monthly financial statements with Evelyn, the sharp, silver-haired financial advisor who had kept him grounded since his lottery win. They sat in her high-rise office overlooking the water, a stack of folders between them. Evelyn tapped her pen against a digital tablet. "Marcus, did you authorize a credit inquiry from a private lending firm called Harbor Capital?" Marcus frowned, setting down his coffee. "No, I haven't applied for a loan, a credit card, or a mortgage." "Why?" "Someone ran a comprehensive background and asset search on you," Evelyn said, her eyes narrowing. "They used your full legal name, your previous Charles Village address, and your social security number. The inquiry was flagged because your assets are shielded inside the private family trust we set up. Whoever did this was looking for a back door into your funds." Marcus felt a cold sensation in the pit of his stomach. He remembered a Saturday afternoon in July when he had been cooking dinner for Lisa in his Canton Row home. He had left her alone in his living room for 20 minutes while he ran to the corner store for fresh herbs. His desk, where he kept his tax documents and trust paperwork, had been unlocked. "Lisa," Marcus muttered, "we need to freeze your credit profiles immediately," Evelyn said, her voice commanding. "And I'm going to flag your trust accounts for dual-factor verbal authorization. No money moves unless you and I are physically in the same room." "Do it," Marcus said. But Lisa and her father, Richard, weren't just looking for a simple bank transfer. They were far more calculated. 2 days later, Marcus received a formal, notarized letter in the mail. It was printed on the heavy, embossed letterhead of Vanguard Logistics. Inside was a document titled Binding Letter of Intent and Personal Guarantee. According to the paperwork, Marcus had allegedly signed a contract agreeing to act as a personal guarantor for a $1.5 million business transition loan for Vanguard Logistics, using his Canton property and his private trust holdings as collateral. At the bottom of the page was a signature that looked remarkably like Marcus's own neat, cursive handwriting. Attached to the contract was a letter from Richard's corporate attorney, stating that because Vanguard Logistics had entered technical default on their transitional credit line, the lender was preparing to seize Marcus's Canton home and liquidate $1.5 million of his trust holdings within 10 business days unless the balance was settled. It was a setup, a forged signature backed by a predatory contract designed to drain his wealth before he could fight it in court. Marcus sat at his kitchen table, staring at the forged signature. He didn't panic. Panic was for people who didn't know how to navigate a storm. He picked up his phone and called his childhood friend, Derek, who worked as a detective in the Baltimore Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. "They're trying to roll me, Derek," Marcus said, explaining the document. "A forged personal guarantee is a federal class action felony, especially involving those numbers," Derek said over the line. "But proving forgery in court takes time, Marcus. A smart civil attorney can tie up your assets in litigation for months, forcing you to pay a massive settlement just to get your life back. That's what they're banking on. They think you'll pay them to make it go away." "I'm not paying them a dime," Marcus said, his voice hard. "If we want to shut this down permanently, we need proof of intent," Derek advised. "We need them on tape admitting the signature is fake, or we need to catch whoever forged it in the act of trying to enforce it." Marcus leaned back in his chair, looking out at his patio. "I can get them to talk. They still think I'm just a lucky guy from East Baltimore who got rich and doesn't know how the world works." The next afternoon, Marcus called Lisa. Took 3 rings before she answered. Her voice was cold, completely stripped of the sweet, melodic tone she had used when they walked the promenade. "What do you want, Marcus?" I think our lawyers have made our position clear. Lisa, we need to talk. Not through lawyers, Marcus said, letting a slight tremor of worry creep into his voice. I got the letter. My advisor is losing her mind. She says this could ruin everything I've built. I can't lose my house, Lisa. Please. There was a brief pause on the line. Marcus could almost hear the triumphant smile spreading across her face. I told you, Marcus, she said, her voice dripping with artificial sympathy. We were trying to build a future together. If you had just invested in the business like a real partner, we wouldn't be in this mess. Now my father's hands are tied. Can we meet? Marcus pleaded. Just you, your dad, and me, at the Vanguard office in South Baltimore. Let's figure out a compromise. I can bring some financial documents. Maybe we can settle this for a smaller amount before the banks get involved. I'll talk to my father, Lisa said, her tone suddenly victorious. Be there at 7 o'clock tonight. And Marcus, don't bring your advisor. At 6:45 p.m., Marcus pulled up to the Vanguard Logistics office, a weathered brick warehouse near the Locust Point docks. He adjusted the lapel of his casual jacket. Tucked into his inner pocket was his phone, running an active recording application. In the unmarked sedan parked across the street, Derek and a second detective sat with their receivers active, monitoring the live audio feed. Marcus walked into the building. The office was quiet, the dispatch desks empty. Lisa and Richard were waiting for him in the wood-paneled conference room at the back. Marcus, Richard said, standing up and offering a patronizing smile. I'm glad you've decided to be reasonable. In business, we have to make difficult choices. Lisa sat beside her father, her arms crossed, looking at Marcus with smug satisfaction. You thought you were so smart walking out on us. You should have remembered that people in our circle have resources you can't even dream of. Marcus sat down, looking visibly distressed. We deserve that capital more than some kid from East Baltimore who got a lucky ticket. I copied your signature from your old lease agreement. It was incredibly easy. So you're admitting you forged it, Marcus said quietly. Of course we forged it, you idiot, Lisa hissed, her patience wearing thin. But who is going to believe you? You're a working-class guy with a temporary bank account. We have the lawyers, we have the connections, and we have the notarized document. You write the check, or we take everything. Richard nodded in agreement. She's right, Marcus. Sign the settlement agreement, or we ruin you. Marcus let out a slow, deep breath. The worry vanished from his face, replaced by the calm, steady expression of a man who had already won. He leaned back in his chair and smiled. You know, Richard, Marcus said, his voice entirely relaxed. Growing up poor in Baltimore teaches you to watch your back. But it also teaches you that the loudest people in the room are usually the most careless. Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and tapped the screen to stop the recording. Before Richard or Lisa could respond, the heavy glass doors of the office pushed open. Derek and 3 uniformed Baltimore police officers stepped into the conference room. Richard's face went entirely pale. He stood up so fast his chair clattered to the floor. What is the meaning of this? You can't just trespass. Richard and Lisa Vance, Derek said, pulling a set of handcuffs from his utility belt. You are under arrest for conspiracy, identity theft, and grand larceny by forgery. We have your entire confession on a live audio feed, backed by a warrant-authorized recording. Lisa stared at Marcus, her eyes wide with terror as an officer stepped behind her, pulling her arms behind her back. Marcus, please, we can work this out. Marcus stood up, picking up his folder. He looked at Lisa, then at Richard, who was silently being cuffed by the officers. I told you before, Lisa, Marcus said softly. A business built on tricking people is already bankrupt. You thought my background made me weak. But the truth is, it's the only thing that kept me smart. He turned his back on them, walking out of the dim warehouse and into the cool evening air of Locust Point. The harbor lights reflected off the dark water, bright and constant. Marcus walked back to his car, completely free, and drove home to Canton. Thank you for watching. Check out this next new series.